Hey everyone, welcome to Locked In, the channel that brings the best college football intel to the modern fan. We appreciate all of you who've watched our channel and would love for you to become part of the channel by clicking the subscribe button. This will help us become more visible on YouTube and help us achieve our goal of raising football IQs everywhere through in-depth analysis in plain English. Thanks everyone. Stay locked in. Hey, welcome back to another bowl season episode of Locked In, where we provide football intel for the modern fan. I am the coach, Dr. Jeremy Locke, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, Logan Revel and Chance Rollins. Tonight, we're going to see a game that a lot of people already had the conclusion that they already had the conclusion in mind for. Texas versus Washington in the Sugar Bowl, and the Texas Longhorns are going to win this game. The reason why they're going to win this game is because they are very mighty, totally superior, completely from Texas. Washington's played no one, and Texas has dominated a very difficult schedule. Does that sound right, Chance?
I mean, that's about right.
Thought so. We start out, do you see any problems with the prevailing claim that Texas is going to walk through Washington because Washington plays no one and Texas is a complete team?
I see the problem being that while Texas played Alabama week 2, albeit, they have not looked great against anybody all year up until after halftime. And even then, they haven't looked good in almost half of their games. The only reason Texas ever wins by more than 2 touchdowns is because they have depth. They have the 6th best talent in all of college football. Say Washington has 26th, but Washington is a very good football team. They play a lot higher than what their talent is on their team. So I don't think that they will run Washington off the field with depth either. Say I don't think Texas has really played anybody, and they haven't looked particularly well against anybody they've played. Say it's about like the UCF and Georgia Tech game, if we're being honest here.
Yeah, one of the things that stood out to us, because we called that game to go in Georgia Tech's favor, in a pretty convincing manner. That's exactly what happened. And the thing that really stood out was that Big 12 schedule. Central Florida's offense was all the rage, with a lot of commentators leading up to that game, and that's why that everyone had UCF picked to win it. But the thing that we saw as being a big problem is that they had not played a single defense ranked in the top 50 for total defense all year long. And in fact, some of them were at the bottom of the third tier that they had beaten. Ironically, these are the same teams, with the exception of Alabama, that Texas has beaten. So do you think lightning strikes twice? UCF and the Big 12 just didn't look that good against Tech. Do you think Texas might not be quite what they're being billed as when they face the Huskies tonight?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm not a big believer in the Pac-12 being all that great, but this year 2 teams did stand out far away from the pack, and that is Washington and Oregon. They both look head and shoulders above everybody else in the Pac-12 this year, and Washington beat Oregon twice. It's hard to beat a good team once, let alone twice. So
Yes.
Washington has been battle tested, and they are ready to go tonight.
So, Rev, what can you add to the what I will call a problem of perception with Texas? I'm not trying to write Texas off, saying that there's no way that Texas can win this game. Sure, there is. Their head coach Sarkisian, he's been there before. They have a winner at quarterback. I think he's a tough kid back there, a good ball player. They have plenty of things to recommend them. But what has led to this gigantic perception problem that people seem to have with Texas?
Well, Texas is a big brand, bigger brand than Washington, and as we know, as far as media and just coverage, big brands get the most love. And another aspect, Washington plays on the West Coast; they're 3 hours removed from the East Coast. Texas plays, I believe, in Central Time, and more people have eyes on them. They play in a better time slot for a lot of people. Washington has played many games starting at 10 p.m. Eastern time. Now, I'm crazy and I watch those games, but a lot of people don't. So I think a lot of people just don't even put eyes on Washington often enough to realize how good of a team that they are, how complete of a team. I think the reverse can be said about Texas. You know, people see Texas and they see some of the scores at the end of the game. And then, of course, the big one. And this is obviously the thing that's conflating their schedule. And I think all the love that Texas is getting is the Bama win. Week 2, Texas rolls over to Tuscaloosa and they beat Alabama, convincingly at a 10-point win. They play a good game. Ewers looks good. Texas's defense plays well enough. Again, this is week 2, and that is good to remember. This is before Jalen Milroe really came into himself, and I think it was the next week or the 2 weeks after that, Jalen Milroe actually got benched for a game so he could get himself right. And Saban has talked about that previously, of why he did that, and it worked clearly. But at the time, Bama still had a lot of hype. They were number 3 in the country. Is Alabama. Texas goes in Tuscaloosa and beats them, and they have carried that banner with them the whole way down the rest of their season. And when I just look at their schedule, it's weak, and I think the Big 12 has it's weaker than what people say it is. I don't really understand that. I don't know, why the narrative has shifted that way, where people want to say that the Big 12 was better this year than they actually were. I mean, there were a couple teams in there that that had some success. Oklahoma got back right back on track this year, but they were still not a great team. And it's funny that I mentioned Oklahoma because that's the next best team that Texas saw all year, other than Alabama, and they lost. Texas lost to Oklahoma in the Red River rivalry, or Red River Showdown, they call it now. Anyway, they saw a decent Kansas State team, pretty good Kansas State team. They should have lost that game. I watched that whole thing in its entirety. Kansas State outplayed them. Texas did enough to get into overtime, and then Texas won in overtime. So that's another really tight game. Then Texas plays a very middling TCU team who lost everybody, including all their coaches from last year's national championship run. Did not have a good season this year. Texas wins that game by 3. And then, of course, everybody points to the Big 12 championship game. And Texas looked great in the Big 12 championship game. They dog walked Oklahoma State, and they had control over the game for pretty much from go. They were on top of it. But I think that also fits into this whole idea where the Big 12, as you guys have talked about, the Big 12 is not good defensively. And it's been a conference that does not play defense. There have been occasions where a couple teams in the Big 12 will play better defense. Oklahoma has been trying to get to that point. They did better this year, but still not anywhere close to other conferences that you would look at. Oklahoma State typically in the past has had better defense than most of the teams in the Big 12, but they lost the biggest reason for that, Jim Knowles, 2 years ago, who was now the defensive coordinator at Ohio State. Now Ohio State has one of the top defenses in the country. So there's just not a lot of good defense being played in the Big 12. So for a team like Texas, who can score points with not a lot of opposition against them, they're able to come out of games and win games where I think it's more narrative driven than it is a good team driven. And it's frustrating because I think on the other hand, Washington, they have been, battle tested. They have played some close games. They have played some bad games. Everybody has played bad games this year. All the top teams have. But I think one thing that stands out with Washington is they have played a better schedule, and they also have come out unscathed. And I know that there's different opinions on the argument of undefeated and schedule and all these things. Washington's played a good schedule, and Washington also has won all their games. It takes something special to win every game that's set in front of you. And Texas was unable to do that. Washington was able to do that. I think that means something.
Yeah, I think so too, and I think you're exactly right on the fact that the Longhorn brand, it carries weight in a lot of people's minds, whether you've seen them or not. And so I think that is something that has to be a little aggravating if you are the Washington Huskies, because Washington, they have a pretty good history. They've won national championships, but it's almost like they surface and then disappear for a while, and then resurface and then disappear for a while. And in recent years, they've been pretty impressive. So I think that it is time to, really see them do something on the national stage. And so just let's begin like we begin a lot of these games. If you had to tell the casual viewer watching this game where they should be putting their eyes at on each team, what would you start with? Chance, who do you think we need to be watching first and foremost for Washington?
Oh, I think it has to be the man, Michael Penix Jr. He is a Heisman caliber quarterback. He probably should have won it last year, even though C.J. Stroud did, or no, Caleb Williams did last year, but probably should have been Penix. Had a really good year last year. He didn't have as good of a year this year, um, but he has a really good arm. He has really good placement. He makes smart decisions. If he needs a first down on like a 3rd and 7, he can pick it up with his feet if he has to. He can throw on the run if he gets pressured. Now, he isn't your typical rushing quarterback. He ain't going to go out of his way. They don't run a lot of option. He's a pass first quarterback. He's honestly a pro style. He's a lefty, so he's a little weird when you watch him. It's kind of like watching Tua. It looks weird. It looks odd, but he's good, and he runs their offense very good.
Rev, who's somebody you would point out for Texas that we ought to keep our eyes on?
Well, I'm interested to see the Texas D line. I think the Texas D line would be the strength of their defense. Their secondary is rough, and they've been exposed on multiple occasions. But their D line has been able to carry them through when needed. They're able to rush the passer. They normally can stand up against the run fairly decently. But again, this is a topic of, are they really really great, or are they overblown by narratives? And I think that's something that it'll be very interesting to see. Washington has a good offensive line, and I would like to see the matchup between that Washington O-line who can manhandle people in front of them. I look to Oregon's defensive line in the Oregon Washington both games, but especially the Pac-12 game, championship game. Washington was able to run the ball incredibly effectively against a very good Oregon front, and that's by and large part to Washington's O-line. And I expect them to have a similar game plan and attack. It's gonna be a balanced breakfast for Washington's offense. I think Penix is going to be able to make great throws, just like Kent was talking about, because he's a stud. But I also think that Washington is going to look to be able to run the ball effectively and enough to really kind of throw Texas's defense off, and also just keep Texas's D-line from pinning their ears back. Because I think that's the one thing that when you're watching, you don't want to get into. You don't want that front to just full send constantly every down. Against your quarterback, you want him to have a pocket. You want him to be able to make his reads and make his throws. It's harder to do when you have big boys who are quick in your face for Texas D line. So I'm very interested to see the matchup between Texas D line and Washington O line.
Do we have any X factors? I mean, are there some people that we might not be mentioning who could come in and make a big impression on this game? That could be coaches, players, whatever.
I think you have to first of all look towards the Texas side over there, which is with their wide receiver A.D. Mitchell or Adonai Mitchell. He had a big impact in the championship games with Georgia when he was at Georgia before he transferred to Texas, and I think he could have a really big impact tonight. Because Washington runs a lot of man, you'll see it, and if he could beat them in man once or twice and have some big plays, it could be a really interesting game.
And I'm looking at the cornerback play for Washington's defense. I don't think Washington's defense gets enough love. And I think Washington's an interesting team because sometimes it's their offense. Everybody talks about Michael Penix in the offense, but there have been games where they have been completely inept. Arizona State is one of those ones that comes to mind. That one, I think that game started at 10:30 at night. Not a lot of people watch that game. Arizona State, I don't think wanted to win that game because they had every opportunity to, and they handed it back to Washington. Basically because of Washington's offense just sputtering in that game for whatever reason. But what kept them in it was their defense, and that is led, interestingly enough, by their cornerbacks. They play three guys at corner. They have a nickel in a lot of their packages, especially because of the teams that they play against. But you have Dominique Hampton, who leads Washington in total tackles at 92. He's got 2 picks on the year, as well. Then you have Elijah Jackson, another cornerback, and Jabbar Muhammad, another cornerback, 52, 42 tackles respectively. Jabbar Muhammad has 3 picks on the year. And so their 3 cornerbacks are in the top 6 tacklers for this Washington team. And some of that is due to the schemes that they play against and their cornerbacks playing into the flats and playing run support while the safeties are more pass over top. That does happen a lot. And it's also just an interesting a stat to look at the picks that you'll see from Washington. So, yeah, 3 by one guy, 2 by another corner, and then each starting linebacker has a pick on the season. You have a safety with 3 picks. And then you have 2 more rotational cornerbacks that are more coverage guys in longer down situations, Thaddeus Dixon and Cameron. I don't even want to Fabi something. I can't say that last name. I'm going to try. He has 2 picks too, and then you have 2 other safeties that are in rotation that have a pick as well. So they pick the ball off a lot. They are swarming on defense on passing down situations. Second and third and longs. They'll go into a dime a package when they'll have more DBs on the field. And when they do that, you'll see some rotational guys that have plenty of reps this season who have played in a lot of games, and they're able to find the ball really well. And I think that it's not necessarily a single player X factor. It's more of the narrative not talking about Washington's defense, I think, needs to be brought up. Because Texas, they like to throw the football. They have a great quarterback in Quinn Ewers, and I expect him to be throwing the ball around the field. But watch out for Washington turning them over a couple times with linebackers sinking into coverage or just extra DBs on the field. Somebody in the robber position, Washington will do that sometimes where they'll just have a DB who is just free. He doesn't have a responsibility necessarily for a man or necessarily a zone. He's just open to watch the quarterback's eyes, to see where it's going, maybe from film if he has idea of where the ball's going to go per formation. He's going to be looking to take the ball away from Texas. And I think there's an opportunity here to see a turnover to that Washington's DBs get on Quinn Ewers.
So one name that I want to mention that hasn't come up yet, and he's missed a lot of the season, Washington wide receiver Jalen McMillan. So a year ago, McMillan had 79 catches for 1,098 yards, basically a 14-yard average, 9 touchdowns, and he missed a lot of time this year. Now, so he plays the first 3 games and is hurt Michigan State week, comes back 11-25 against Washington State, has limited action, 5 catches, 26 yards. A week later against Oregon in the Pac-12 championship, he has 9 catches for 131, 14.5-yard average, and a 45-yard long. That is a big weapon to get back and have a month to work with before this game. And I think that that's going to change up Texas's preparation because you're giving Penix not just another weapon, but one of his best weapons to get back in sync with. And it's someone who's been missing this entire year. And that stretch where the offense sputtered a lot for Washington, I think it might have been because that he wasn't there to help them out. So it's good for the Huskies to have him back. I think bad for the Longhorns. I'm interested to see if he affects this game. So now that we've kind of got our, I guess we got our eyes situated on some things to watch, let's jump to the film. Where do you want to start?
We're going to start with the Washington film. This is the Pac-12 championship game that we've referenced a couple times. I'll go ahead and let this play and Chance take over.
Yeah, so first of all, we're going to have this screen. It's one of the best screens that I've saw ran all year. Just the way they run it, the way they block it. At the start of the play, you'll see the first receiver just start immediately shuffling outside while you get both other receivers to have their body turned inside and get on the outside of the DBs right there and just basically get in their way. And when they attack you, put your hands out and get in their way. And I think that Washington could be very successful running this because, I mean, you get the ball into your athletes' hands and you let them go. Say Penix gets it out there fast as soon as he can. Snap's coming. Penix gets it out. It looks really good. Probably the best screen I've saw all year. So after that, we'll have Oregon on offense, and they'll have a motion, and you see Bo Nix just making plays as usual, but you know what? Who's there? Washington's DBs. Great throw, right on right on target. Referee standing there. He hits the referee. Um, Sadly for them. I mean, I don't think it would have been called anyways. Number one was rotting his grill. I mean, he probably would have been, or number 7, it probably would have been a pick if it didn't hit that ref.
Yeah, I think
Um,
that's a deflected ball or a pick.
yeah, so I mean, Washington's DBs are good. They stay walked in, like we do on this channel. Um, they they're really aggressive and physical. So I like Washington's DBs, especially in this matchup. They also have help over the top, which will help going against AD Mitchell and Xavier Worthy, other guys like that from Texas.
I do want to point out a sign of a good defense is the communication of a defense. If they can communicate well and they know where their assignments are supposed to be. We talked about this Michigan earlier on today about how they communicate well and they all do the responsibilities that they're supposed to, and that way they can play good team defense. Up here, you have a corner and you have a safety who they see 15 in the backfield. They see him motioning around, and you can see them communicate about who's going to get who, depending on what happens. There's a quick exchange here, and there's a pass off. So they've changed whose man is who, and it works very effectively. The safety who is going to break inside with that inside receiver is able to be in good position there. If they don't communicate that well, if there's a miscommunication, somebody, or maybe it's just late communication, then you're maybe looking at a step or two behind that guy, or just a blown coverage, because that happens all the time. I mean, there's many times you'll be watching college football this year where a safety or a safety to safety or safety to corner, sometimes safety to linebacker, there's a communication on coverage, but one of them's not paying attention, one of them isn't getting the call correctly, and then you know a couple seconds later you see a target wide open going down the field. A lot of times on the sideline, on wheel routes, on motions, just because there's a little bit of confusion on the defensive backfield side on who's got what. And in this one, is a good example of Washington just communicating well and being smart with how they're playing it.
Say next, I think we'll go into Washington's offense. They got a bunch at the top of the screen. We watched this in the Oregon film earlier. You get a puller going right here and just a cutback. Say Washington's line is very good. Say you see the linebackers go in motion with the pull, and you see the running back just take this step and just cut right back off of 77's hip pocket. Saying to have a running back that can read that and actually cut back on it, that is something that is very rare and valuable.
Mm-hmm.
So I know Walk loves that, and he'll always want that on his team. So
I'll tell you something too about. Go ahead and run this.
No, you go ahead. You go
look
ahead.
back at him.
You go ahead.
Well,
We'll go back.
One of the things that really stands out to me on the previous run is if you look at it, this looks just like a traditional power play, just power O. And the two things that make power is you kick out the play side end, you wrap with the backside guard. Well, what's happening here is Washington's taking advantage of the outside leverage of the defensive end to their right side. 73 is about to get him. So it has the effect of widening that gap. So we come down, we pick up the linebacker. They have the wall formed. 77 is going, or 71 is going to wrap around. And because they can do this out of this particular personnel package, it really puts a lot of stress on the defense. Because look at what you have over the trips receivers to the opposite side of the field. You've got 4 defenders over top of them. They are so worried about the screen game. And I wouldn't be surprised if that is the Jalen, the player that I mentioned earlier, behind. He's the one who caught that screen pass that we looked at earlier. They have to respect Washington's screen game. And because they have to do that, they're going to get into positions where they're over leveraged. And instead of just sticking it in this guard's hip pocket and following him, they're treating this in such a way that they want the Oregon defense to react to this guard, because they are under the impression we must come and meet the guard and tackle the back. They're almost playing them to see if they attack the guard, they cut back. If they don't attack the guard, then they're going to follow the guard. So I mean, this is a more complicated play than it looks like in Washington. blocks the heck out of it. Look at that lane. I mean, there's not a soul there but that referee. Very nice play design.
Yeah, I would say, as most coaches would say, you could run a truck through that hole.
No doubt.
Yeah, say next play we'll see is just a toss, power side. Say I think they have a trips formation over here to that side. Say again, it's even overloaded from Oregon, and they just Washington's just good. I mean, their line is very good. Their tight end is very good. He can block. Their receivers block. I mean, they really just play good, sound football, and that's a testament to them. Say their linemen get out here and pull on the toss. They beat the running back on a toss. So that's something
Yeah.
that's very rare to see. See number big 55 and 71 get out here and create that lane. So without them, 8 comes in. This guy comes in. 33 would fly in. So without them big boys up there, so you don't get a lot of work done as a running back. Them big boys protect him. So he does a
And
good job. Yeah, go ahead.
right here, that toss play, the thing I find interesting about it is a trend that we have seen so much, and I still don't have an answer for it personally. Lots of defenses seem to be content with playing their end head up on a tackle. And
Mhm.
to me, there's no outside linebacker presence over there in the sense of like a 3-4 or 4-4 setup because he's caught into this whole array of receivers. So his job changes whether he thinks it does or the defense thinks it does or not. That's a different position than being the outside linebacker because he has all those receivers. So what ends up happening is that right here, the dogs look a lot like the dogs. This is straight out of the Georgia Bulldog football team's offensive playbook. It's a big, nasty pin and pull, and they know that they've got their main run defenders absolutely outflanked. And if Oregon, I mean, or talking not Oregon, but if Texas messes around and gets out of alignment, Washington will see that and they will absolutely run the ball on them. And I think that that's something, that you got to wonder about happening because those Big 12 teams that they've been facing all year, they don't do stuff like this. And so I think that this is an advantage, kind of like what we talked about in the earlier game, that Michigan having not seen a running quarterback is a real advantage for Alabama. I think the same thing holds true here. Washington, even though they have a lot of really snazzy spread parts, they have a lot of power football in their toolbox, and that's what I think that they would say that their identity is just lining up and figuring a way to get the ball where you ain't on the ground. And Texas is going to have to be ready for that, or they're going to pay the price.
Yeah, with that being said, we'll go into the next play over here and we'll look at Bo Nix, just be Bo Nix, and get his ball to an athlete in a man situation. And 15 just takes it and gets a few extra yards right here. Say Washington plays man very good, but sometimes, they do get lost in the sauce, as you would say. They have 3 people. They're just very far away, honestly. Say you'll see the same play ran next, and they'll be a lot closer. But I mean, you have a guy 15 yards away about it, and the other 2 are about 10. See, Washington is best running their man when they're aggressive and they're physical. So you can get hands on within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. So it's always best to do that. The risk is you get burnt deep. Well, you have 2 safeties over top to help with that. You might as well use them.
And this is honestly, I mean, you can tell this is a mismatch. You got a heck of a receiver, and then you have a linebacker trying to cover him in man. And it's a good route. Bo knows what he's going to get out of this. He knows he has the mismatch that he wants. Just, let your guy make a play. It's 2nd and 8. If this guy makes a good tackle in the open field, all right, it's 3rd and 4. And otherwise, let's hope your guy can make a good play on it. I expect Texas to try and do a couple things like this and expose linebackers lining up on running backs and linebackers lining up in the slot. trying to cover those guys. Xavier Worthy for Texas is a receiver that is a mismatch, especially if Texas can find ways to get him covered by a linebacker or a slower safety type, they can find ways to get him the ball, and he can make you pay. And then I believe his name is Brooks, Jonathan Brooks, running back for Texas. This is another one that you see coming out of the backfield on some routes. I expect that you're going to see some mismatch stuff with him as well that Texas is going to look to expose and gain some yards. And then it'll just be about Washington's ability to adjust to that and also rally to the football in those situations where their safeties can come down and really help with the underneath stuff that you're going to see in those mismatch situations.
So yeah, and what's even better is the next play. We'll see just a quarter later. You'll see the same play. Washington's just closer, playing more aggressive man, and 42 gets burnt again. So I mean, they was targeting 42 on Washington's defense with the mismatches. This time it's with Jordan James, who's very athletic running back, who I like a lot. And he just makes one cut and out and up, and is wide open, and it's a perfect ball. I mean, there's a safety over top, and 42 isn't that far behind him. So I mean, he's going to get hit. And if he places that any more in front of Jordan James, could be a pick. Could get Jordan killed. If he places it any far behind 42, the linebacker could pick it off or deflect it. So it was a great ball, great play, great route. I mean, it had to be perfect. And I don't know if I trust Quinn Ewers to throw a perfect ball like that, if I'm going to be honest.
Yeah, this is exactly what I was talking about with the mismatch idea. A running back on a linebacker in a man coverage, the running back swinging out, running out and up, and he's getting to run full speed on these in his own cuts, and this linebacker is trailing behind him, and that's just not going to work out very well. That reminds me of Ohio State in the playoff. I think it was the playoff game, trying to defend Slim Reaper from Alabama, Devontae, right?
Yes, Devontae.
Yes,
Mhm.
Devontae Smith. I remember a couple of situations, and more than a couple, where they tried to man up Devontae with a linebacker who weighed 260 pounds. And if you recall that game, I believe he had over 200 yards in the first half alone, just him. And those kind of mismatches you got to take advantage of if a team is going to give them to you. So if Washington is going to continue to give those to Texas, Texas is going to have to hit on them.
Yeah, I do agree. Next, we'll go to Washington on offense, and pretty sure it's just a nice little pass by Penix, and I mean that's just perfect accuracy. Oregon also is in man, so there's not much separation there. It's a sideline throw. I really like Penix. I think he can get the job done as long as they just play to their strengths. It's a 3-level flood right here. It's a concept that beats almost anything. And, you play smart football and you can place the ball right, you can win almost any game. And I think that's how Washington does it. See, I don't care if Washington runs for 60 yards, 80 yards, 120 yards. Their main weapon is going to be their passing game. And I think they could very easily throw for over 300.
It's an embarrassment of riches for Washington. They have two, Aduze, who caught that last ball that we saw. He's an 1,000-yard receiver. They have another one who's a 1,000-yard receiver. And then we also were talking about their third man that Locke brought up, who has been battling injury. He's not a 1,000-yard receiver by any means this year, but he is an absolute talent who's just been plagued by the injury bug, but he can nonetheless make you hurt, and he made Oregon hurt. So you got three guys who on most teams, each of them would be a number one receiver on any other team. Save for a few. But in this one, you got three number ones all on the same team on the field at the same time. It's, how are you going to cover all of us? I've heard that statement by a couple of teams this year when they were at full strength and they had some absolute studs on the outside and on the inside. Same thing here with Washington. I think that they just have so much firepower at the receiving position, and they have some really good tight ends as well. They got two guys, I think, who are over 300 yards at the tight end position with a couple touchdowns apiece. And then you got a great running back and an absolutely stellar quarterback who can throw the ball anywhere on the field. That's just a recipe for major success in the air. I think chances right. I don't think Washington will have to run the ball. I think they'll be able to, and I don't think they maybe even will want to, just to keep it balanced and to keep those DBs and the DB's kind of in conflict with run support versus in the pass game. And then I also think, to stop Texas from pinning their ears back. But at the end of the day, Washington is going to be able to have success throwing this football because I think Texas DBs, they're just not as good as they are advertised to be.
Yeah, I'd be right there with you on that one. And what's even better is that Iowa or Washington can hit you short and they can hit you long. So they have receivers that are very athletic, and I don't care how good your DBs are, they can get burnt real easy. You watch right here, and you got a trips to the left, and 11 just gets loose in that man coverage. So even got safety help over top and still gets loose to that corner. Because, I mean, that's the only place in a cover two you're going to want to go to the outside corner, above the corner, to the left of the safety. It's the only place that's really open in a cover two deep, unless you just run some crossers and mix them up in the middle. So, I mean, it's a good ball placement, good play call, good route. So as long as Washington plays like they've proven themselves to play almost all season, they should be fine in this game. I mean, Penix just proves his point over and over again that he is an elite quarterback. So the last play we'll point out here is this play by Oregon. You'll see the tight end go in motion here. Bo Nix will fake. I think it's a toss. Oh, wait, no. My bad. So Bo Nix will actually just act like he's going to run it power, which, I mean, I understand it. Bo Nix is a good runner. He runs a lot and can make plays happen on his feet. And you just see the linebackers crash. And right over top, it's number 3, they're tied in for a nice little touchdown grab. Really kept them in the game there. They needed that. And the first play that we get into for Texas will show even greater how that's going to help Texas out. The linebackers crashing on any sign of run, which I know it's not exactly the same with what Texas does here, but at the same time, it is the same premise. They see the motion. You're going to see a motion here after we go through it again, and it's just a play action. They're going to think it's a run, and Texas is just going to go right over top, and with a flood, I think it is, to A.D. Mitchell, who I said would be a difference maker in this game.
So here's your fake toss.
Yeah, the fake toss. You get the motion right here with that receiver, and you'll get this tight end going across, and then A.D. Mitchell across. So you got a 3-level flood right here, and you'll see the linebackers crash, 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 and then they just get beat. So, I mean, as a linebacker in this game, say Quinn and them, you'll have to watch for their play action motion. Any tosses, any runs, they run play action quite a bit, and they can also run the ball good. So, I mean, if they key in on that, then I think Washington will be in trouble with the run game just because their linebackers will be out of sync. But I think it'll be okay. Mainly because of Washington's offense. And this shows you Texas's defense right here. I have no faith in their DBs. It was number 10 there ran a stop and go. He just acted like he was going to run a hitch. And then 8 just crashed so hard. And we'll see that a lot with Washington because they run all them short routes. They run screens. You'll start to see their corners probably start to crash today. And they're going to get beat deep because of it. And also number 23 comes over their safety. He doesn't play the ball. He doesn't play the man. He doesn't turn around. He just kind of runs at number 10, and number 10 jumps up and catches the ball on his head. It's like, what are you doing here? As a safety, at least do something. Go for the ball. Go for the man. It's like, don't just run into him with your hands up. It's like, that's the worst thing you can do as a DB. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it.
Yeah, so something with this safety, if he is supposed to have over the top help, which by the end of the play, it seems that is what his job is supposed to be, he's late getting deep and getting over the top. Because right now, your receiver here near the 50, he's already in his break, about to go vertical. And at the moment that the receiver is in his break, the safety is still on the hash, and he then has to not only get over to where the receiver is going to be on the numbers, but he also has to get deep. So he's just a little bit late trying to get over top, because by the time the ball is there, they're even. They're pretty much even with each other. He does overrun him a bit, but 10 jumps up for this pass. 23 doesn't play the ball. He doesn't play the man. He's late getting there. I would like him to be there a little bit earlier so he's able to make, because this ball could be picked off if this play is played better by the safety. He can get his hips turned around if he's there in a more timely manner. If he plays this better, his steps would be more correct. He'd be able to get his head towards the ball and get up in front of the ball. And instead, he's there on the same time, kind of overruns it based on kind of the jump that 10 goes up and high points the ball, and 23 just doesn't play it well. It's just a contested ball. You want your DB to at least see where this ball is coming down, and he doesn't. And if your DB is not going to see where the ball is, he's got to play the man a little bit better than 23 does. He kind of just does a mixture of both, but not good enough in either sense. And 10 does, I mean, all credit to 10. 10 makes a great catch here. That's a highly contested ball, but you would just like to see a safety having over top help. You'd like to see him in a better position to make a better play on this ball and to maybe turn it over. And I also think, Oklahoma State had a very good season, and congrats to them for that season that they had. But they are not Washington. Their receivers are not Washington's receivers, and their quarterback is not Michael Penix. So I don't think you're going to see as many bad balls from Penix. I think you're going to see ones that are much more on a line and much more where those receivers are going to be able to get them with ease. And then at the same token, those receivers that Washington has, they're studs, and they're going to make plays happen. So I think, struggling against a couple different times, Texas does struggle against Oklahoma State's receivers. They're going to probably have some troubles with Washington's receivers.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you there. Anything you'd like to add about that, Walt?
No, I think you're pretty much on it. There are moments where I think Oklahoma State is just overmatched. And one of the things that just strikes me about this game, and strikes me about a lot of the other games, is something y'all said. Texas's players are just too much. I don't know that Texas themselves are too much for a top level team, but I know that they're too much for the teams that they're playing against. But when you see kind of what Red pointed out about the technique, the safety on that particular deep pass play for Oklahoma State, um, they leave a lot to be desired. And I think that doesn't show up against an opponent like Oklahoma State, but I think that it is going to show up against Washington.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I honestly think this game turns into a shootout real fast. If Washington isn't careful, I don't think Texas has the defense to run with them. But if you get AD Mitchell doing things like this against your cover two, and I mean it could very well happen. I mean Oklahoma State doesn't have the boys to run with AD Mitchell in man coverage, but I think Washington might. Um, say Ohio State didn't a few years ago. So I mean, who knows? But I think that Washington has a very good chance to honestly just walk away with this game as a dominant team. And I think that it'll probably give some scares for everybody in the future when they move to the Big Ten and have to play Michigan and Ohio State every year.
This is just a straight go. He puts a little bit of move on him when he gets about 7 yards off the ball. Does a false step, false head nod, then goes the other way to the sideline and just burnt toast. Just beats him flat out. There's nothing this guy was going to be able to do besides turn his hips a lot quicker and don't bite up on the move, which he did. Texas has playmakers. They also have a great amount of playmakers on their side of the ball. So kind of what I was pointing out, I'm interested to see which offense we're going to get for Washington, or which defense we're going to get for Washington, because there have been times where they have played very, very well, and it'll be interesting matchup to see them try and stop this Texas offense with their really good players that they have.
Now, one thing I really like about Texas is their offensive line. They are very good. Their tight end can block. They have very good run schemes. So I think it will honestly be a problem today. You see the two pullers here, and number 4 just make a cut, get some good yards there, and into a touchdown. He can break arm tackles. It's an Oklahoma State, so I mean I don't know what it'll be against Washington. There's no real good film to compare anybody Texas has played to Washington or to Alabama. I mean, they played Alabama, but I don't count that. It's week 2. Alabama was a completely different team, and they didn't know if they wanted Jalen Milroe to be the quarterback or they wanted Tyler Buckner to be the quarterback. So, I mean, it's a different Alabama team. I put not much stock into that game, if I'm going to be honest. So there's no real good film to like see if Texas is going to actually contend in this game or in the playoffs at all. Just from what I'm seeing, the way they run their defense and their offense with their schemes, so they can't be competitive on defense, but they can definitely be competitive on offense. You see athletes make plays, and you see Quinn make bad decisions. I mean, if Quinn can get them the ball, they can do something. But when you have Quinn throwing right across the middle of the field, which he doesn't do well, if you have him throwing it to the other team right across the middle of the field, that doesn't help you. Say they're gonna when it comes to man coverage, I think the best man beater is gonna be mesh. And that's the basis of mesh is you're meshing two receivers together to run DBs into each other. So what you're going to do is you're going to run two receivers across the middle of the field. Say even crossers, you're still running two wide receivers across the middle of the field, two DBs. What is Quinn's worst pass? It's any pass across the middle of the field. Say if you can't run mesh, if you can't run crossers against a man coverage, then you cannot beat a man coverage. So I really worry about that aspect. And this is just the zone coverage. This is just a guy standing right there and Quinn just throwing it right to him.
So Quinn is looking left side of the field the whole way through. Ball hits hands. His eyes are on the left side of the field, and he's watching to see what happens over there. And he also knows in his head, okay, I've got a crosser coming to this spot. So I can look left at my receivers that are on my left side. And then I also know that if 1 and 2 on my left don't open up, then I'll have a third guy crossing the field that I should be able to throw to for a check down play. He doesn't like what he sees. He's got a 5-man rush in front of him, so he's got to get the ball out quick. And I mean, your line was right there. He looks left, and then right near the end, he drifts a little bit to the middle because he knows he's got that third option coming across the field, and he just point blank misses the black jersey. I mean, it's as if he completely did not see him. He may have thrown that might have been a bad ball, but it feels like to me that he just didn't see him somehow. He was so locked in and looking for that white jersey to come across the field into that into his cone of vision that he just wasn't paying attention to the fact that a linebacker had been sitting there the entire play. And if that happens a couple times and he throws a couple picks, like I was talking about on the opening with Washington, they have guys who like to sit around and to like to play that robber spot, like to play that soft zone spot where they can just watch the quarterback and try and key in on him and go get a pick. Quinn has fallen into that trap a couple times this season. Washington loves taking advantage of that. We may see that happen in this game.
Yeah, and it might honestly be a bad ball. Quinn can make almost every throw, and he is a very good quarterback, but he honestly gets hurt quite a bit. I would say he was hurt last year. He got hurt this year. So I think he got hurt his first year too. So, I mean, I don't know. I think that something might be up with Quinn after he got hurt that first time. But he also look at his feet. Look at his feet when he throws this. He's just lazy with it. I don't know what he's doing. He doesn't step forward. He doesn't set his feet. I mean, I have so many problems with Quinn and his motion and the way he reads his progression, the way I don't know. He's a wild card. I mean, he can make things happen. He can throw a good ball deep, but you never know what you're going to get out of him.
I think that's the ultimate problem that he brings to the table is he is either great or he's scary. And I think in a game like this, I think he can be your best weapon or he can be your worst enemy. I'll look for him to turn the ball over tonight. Honestly, I really do.
I think at least once. I say this Washington defense said unless AD Mitchell is just open every play, and I honestly doubt it. I don't even know if Xavier Worthy's playing. I thought he was hurt.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, which I mean, at that point, he is hurt. Said he's still not 100%. He might be playing.
Okay.
His ankle is sore.
Game time
So,
decision.
Game time decision. So nobody knows. But even if he does play hurt, say the only other person they really have that I would trust to throw it to is their tight end. And I mean, he's good, but if you're keying in on AD Mitchell the whole time, that's going to be a rough night for Texas. I mean, that's going to be a rough night for Texas because, say, AD Mitchell, besides Xavier Worthy, is his favorite target, and he goes to him quite a bit, and that's their big time play target too.
Mm-hmm.
Gets a lot of yards. So if you take that out of the game, you're keeping everything underneath. That means Quinn's going to have to sit there all night and throw passes for 5 to 10 yards.
So Washington is the higher ranked seed for this. So that means they get to be the home team. Are they wearing their dark purple tonight? Do we know what their what colors are wearing?
I think they are going to wear their dark purple.
Well, Quinn just might be blind to dark colored jerseys here, so maybe that'll help Washington out.
Yeah, maybe
that's tough.
Yeah, maybe they should have worn black jersey. I didn't know where you was going with that one. That's a good one. Oh, so what a bunch of haters. Saying this one, we'll see a very poor defensive play. Say I talked about the corners playing bad coverage earlier in the safeties and attacking the ball when it's thrown. Well, this ball is just floated up. I mean, this is a gimme ball. This should be a pick. Bowman right here senses pressure and he says, "Get this ball out of my hand. I don't want to be hit." And somehow, by the hand of God, I mean, God's hand must have literally came down upon this ball and placed it in this man's chest because he stands there and just lets it drop right in his hands. And it's honestly a miracle to watch it happen against the number 3 team in the nation, Texas. You would never think that watching this play.
Another thing with DBs and footwork and technique. Corner, he's trailing him, he's step for step. He loses it a little bit here. Steps are a little bit wrong, angle's not very good, but then he stops and he waits on the receiver to make a play on the ball instead of him attacking the ball or him attacking the player. And it's another situation where this is nitpicky. I get it. I'm talking about like a bang bang thing that happens in half a second, and it's very technical and all those things, but it's important. That's what the difference between these contested throws. That's what makes catches versus interceptions. That's what makes batted down balls and completions. So I'm looking for DBs to be aggressive in their play here. Don't let the receiver just have free reign and try and go catch the football and then make contact. Get up there. Now, timing has to be right. Obviously, you make contact with the receiver before the ball gets there, flag comes out. But there is an element of technique that can be taught here where this Texas DB plays this better. He plays this more aggressive, and he gets up. Yeah. He should be in front of this. He should have a step down, and he should be able to get at least his hand. You don't have to put your whole body in front, because I get that. There are a lot of DB coaches that they like the aggressive approach, and then there are also some that don't like that. They'd rather have a hand behind and hand in front, because they would rather a batted down ball than a chance at an interception that could be a completion, or in this case a touchdown. So I understand the philosophy that those playing that safety net where you're going to have a hand behind the receiver's back, just so to keep you with him, and a hand in front to bat a ball down. But you don't see any of that here. And this is a bad ball by the quarterback, a great catch by the receiver, but just no real attention by the DB. It's only after the ball is in the receiver's hands where he then tries to contend. It's too late.
But I mean, like, what does he think is going to happen? Does he think that receiver is just going to run into the stands and burn them deep? Like, I have no idea what the thought process is there to be like, hey, I need to be behind this guy.
I believe this is the same number too. This is number 23. So it's the same So is that right? The other guy we were looking at before was 23?
Yeah, it is.
So in the previous play that we looked at, he was playing. Yeah, that was a safety. So it's the same guy having the same problems. So I look for, if 23 is on the field, if I'm Washington, I pick on that guy.
Yeah, and what we've watched all year is the elite teams can play man coverage very well. Texas cannot. I'll say here we have that man coverage just not holding strong, and they leave 23 wide open. I mean, you give a man room, and he's gone. Say, well, I mean, he gets caught. Watch their DB right here. I think it might be a linebacker, but he gets caught at the beginning of the play with like three other people, just sitting there. I don't think they were set up honestly in time. So it looks like they were just rushed, and Texas snapped the ball, and Ford just gets lost in the motion. If you go back to the start of the play, you'll see it. So I mean, you have to say all three of them right here bunched up at the snap of the ball. It's like you got to be in the right position. I think Washington will be. You can go through film. You don't see Washington out of position before the play or even after the play that much. So I think there's a good shot that one of these balls is not going to be happening or not. But everybody else is honestly pretty manned up. I mean, you got 13 right here. Say, unless Quinn just wants to throw a 50-50 ball, like there's not much room there. Say, there's not much room for Jesus in between them two right there. Say, AD Mitchell's getting locked down right here. I mean, that's what happens when you play physical and you play aggressive against these receivers. They don't like it. Receivers hate getting hands on them. That's why you have hand fighting a lot, and that's why Jalen Hyatt didn't do as good against Georgia and South Carolina at the end of last year. It's because when
So
you get hands on receivers, they hate it, and sometimes they just play terrible and can't get off the route.
this goes to the point a little earlier with in regards to Washington versus how Oklahoma State plays this. Oklahoma State has miscommunication here on who is going to be getting that back. Now, obviously, there's a run-in problem.
Yeah.
It's bunch set releasing, and they're running into each other. But that's the whole point with communication on defense. If you communicate this better, then you should not have a situation where you got three guys running into each other trying to get to their man. And in that play, it seems like a small thing that doesn't need to. You don't need to spend 5 minutes talking about it, but it is, because the difference between a touchdown and an incomplete pass, or a first down and a tackle before the sticks, is communication and assignment, knowing where you're going to be, knowing who you're going to cover. And just like this play, if Oklahoma State has better alignment to this, if they have better communication here, they don't let this running back have such a free reign on the outside without a guy really much closer to him and in contention with him. And instead, as we see how this copy goes, he's got 4 yard separation, and that's a walk-in touchdown. Now, I mean, the guy closes the gap fairly well, but isn't there in time to make the play. And I think Washington isn't going to give you those kind of looks, because I think they're going to do a whole lot better job communicating. All right, where's my man? What's going to happen? Hey, if motion comes here, I'm bumping this way. You got this guy. Like, they have those pre-snap communications that's going to help them succeed in this game. And the only thing that, again, looking back, is the mismatch stuff between linebackers and tight ends sometimes, and linebackers, and definitely the running back that Texas has got. So, I can see that still becoming a factor. I just see Washington's defense playing this better, because I think they play better as a unit and they communicate well.
Yeah, I'd be right there with you, Rev.
Dang.
Another part of this is, can Washington get home to get Quinn Ewers? Quinn isn't the most athletic guy. He can make plays on his feet sometimes, but I mean, Oklahoma State doesn't have that great of a pass rush. They don't have that great of a D line. So getting home, do you think Washington does it tonight? I think that's a good question. And I mean, for all this talk about how good Texas's line is, I mean, that 92 doesn't look that good. Say he's not that big. He's not that special. Say I don't have much faith in the Texas line. So they might be big, they might be highly rated, but as an offensive line, you not only have to be big, fast, strong, you have to be smart. You have to play together with your offensive line and know what everybody else is going to do. And you have to also know what everybody on the defense is going to do at least 90% of the time to be successful. So, I mean, there's a lot to the offensive line. And I'm sure, Locke, if you want to add more to that, you can, because I know you love the offensive line.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be the key, on both sides. Um, I don't know that I don't know that either of these teams are like just what you would consider sack masters,
Mhm.
but I think that what they do have is a persistent enough rush that they can make you make a mistake. Like for instance, Washington has nearly as many interceptions as they have sacks. They have 19 sacks, 16 interceptions on the year. And, the two are going to work hand in hand. And just like what Rev said a minute ago, like with that, in particular, the little touchdown pass that Ewers threw to the running back, the only thing that made that possible was that the two defenders that were allocated to the running back and the receiver on that side didn't talk to each other before the play. And so whenever you see these offensive lines, the things I'm looking for tonight is you've had a month to work. These are some great coaches. They're going to throw wrinkles out there that you haven't seen. One of the main tricks that you want to play whenever you have some time to sit and think is how do we confuse offensive linemen about who to block? Because if you get it right one time on a third down, that could be a big stop against a great offense. So what I'm looking to see, which one of these offensive lines communicates the best? Now, my money is with Washington. I've watched them several times. I really like that team. I like their line, but at the same time, if Texas can keep Ewers clean, if they can figure out what Washington's trying to do to them in terms of the pass rush, I think he can get out there and he can use that X factor to create some plays that might be the difference in this game. Like I said, I think that Ewers can help you greatly. I think he can hurt you also, but that line has a whole lot to say in one, how he performs, two, how the Texas Longhorns can use the running game to keep some pressure off of viewers. So I think you're right. I mean, I think that watching these lines, how they play, it's going to determine a lot and who's going to go on to the national championship. And like you say, this Texas offensive line, they do a pretty good job.
Yeah, and I think that Texas's line is going to be a big part to their game, whether it be on defense or offense. So if they can run the ball for 300 yards, and Sarkeesian actually wants to do that, so that would be how they win. Now I don't think they would ever try to run the ball more than 20 times a game. I really don't. I have no faith in that. But then again, I didn't have faith in Virginia Tech letting Jones run the ball for 30 times. So I mean, whoever
Right.
knows with that. But if I was to say who has the better chance to win here, it is going to be easier for Washington to win here than it is for Texas. And that's just how I feel about it. Say Texas can easily win. It can be a shootout, but if we're talking about who has the better chance to win, I definitely think you got to go with Washington here.
Well, I think in going with what you're saying there, the way that I would word that is, or at least for me, I see I see fewer things having to go right for Washington to win than for Texas. I think that Washington is a more complete team. And as a result, I think that they can stay within their game plan and win this ball game. I don't think Texas presents anything to them that they have not seen. Obviously, the stage is going to be big, so it's going to be interesting to see how that Washington, acts there. But I, Washington's been around for a minute. So my thought on this is that, like what you said, that with Washington being more apt to win this game, the way I would explain it is I think that Washington is going to have to change fewer things or address fewer things than Texas is. Um, and what I mean when I say that is I believe Texas is going to have to do a little bit more than just be who they are to beat Washington because this is not the run of the mill Big 12 team. Washington is a very complete football team. They've been building up for a couple of years to get on this national stage. And so they're here, they're ready to make something happen. And so what always worries me is it can be interesting whenever, say, you have a quarterback like Ewers who is going to have to try to extend a play. It's interesting whenever it works. And he has that in him. He has some magic in him. But at the same time, whenever you're playing against a complete team at this level of football, when you start having to push a little bit more than you typically need to, that's where bad things happen. And I think that if Texas takes the risks that they need to take to get ahead of Washington and they go wrong, I think Washington makes them pay, and it's going to have to be a shootout for Texas to get back in it and have a chance to win. But the reason why I think that Washington is going to have the easier time is they don't really have to be anything other than themselves. I think that they're very complete, more complete probably than most people who keep up with college football might think. So I think Washington's going to come out on top of this one. I don't know what the score will be, given both of the teams' natures. I'd say they're both going to score a lot of points. But I think that Washington is going to be good enough to get the stop when they need it and to get the scores to put them ahead by, say, maybe 10 points. I think this is going to be a little more comfortable of a game for Washington than some might think.
Yeah, just to add on to that, another aspect of this we haven't quite hit on. We did talk about how Washington has beaten a very good Oregon team twice, but not only did they beat them in the regular season in the Pac-12 championship, that Pac-12 championship was slated as a playoff game. Whoever won that game was going to be in. The way that the media had written it up, and again, this kind of goes back to Washington being discounted, even though they were undefeated going into that Pac-12 championship game. Everybody said that Oregon was going to win that game, and it was like a foregone conclusion. Washington had no chance to beat them twice. Oregon was going to win. They were going to knock Washington out of the playoff race, and Oregon would have jumped. So that Pac-12 game was a quarterfinal game for those two teams, the winner in, the loser out. That's how it was set up. And Washington hears that going in. They know they're playing a great team going in. They know that they're an underdog going into it. That they apparently they had no chance to win against a team they already beat. And they responded to the narrative. They responded to the adversity. They responded to the stage. So obviously that was not an official playoff game by any means, but in all other aspects, when you're watching that game, yes, it was. And what did they do? They came out and they took care of business. They were able to beat their rival for the second time. They were able to win that Pac-12 championship. They were able to stay undefeated against a very good team and get that second win over that same very good team. On the other hand, Texas has not had a game like that this season. I mean, other than their rivalry game with Oklahoma, which was a great game. They lost it, close game, back and forth, but they lost it. Washington won that game twice. That same kind of level of a game, Washington was able to come out on top and Texas wasn't. So that would speak to Texas not being able to get over the hump on that big stage. And after, besides the second week of the year with Alabama, which they did win, kudos to them. But then after that, losing their next big game when they played Oklahoma, and then just not having a big stage game after that. They played a good Kansas State team, but Kansas State wasn't slated to do anything major, maybe try and fight for a Big 12 championship, but that was it. There was no college football in their playoff or in their hope in the future. Texas had that going forward. So every single game that Texas played, they had that in the forefront, but they never had that big quarterfinal stage in their last 6-7 weeks of the season. And, you can say what you want with the Big 12 championship game. Oklahoma State they're just not the same team as Texas when it comes to talent. They're definitely not the same team when it comes to talent as Washington. So I think Texas's road has been far easier than Washington's to this point, and Washington has shown that they're able to step up in big moments. Texas has yet to do that, and now we've been harping on Texas this whole time. Clearly, the three of us believe that Washington has what it takes to win. But and as they both said, and I want to make sure I reiterate it too, Texas has the tools to be able to win this game. Both teams are good teams. Both teams are in the playoff. They're in the top tier 1 teams that this season has had, and this season has more of them than many in the past. But I just believe while Texas absolutely has the tools to win, so does Washington. And I think those tools are better equipped. And I think they're better sharpened for Washington. I think they don't have to do as much that's out of their comfort zone to be able to win this game like Locke was talking about. And if I were a bet man, I would throw my money onto Washington just because I think they are the most complete team here.
Any other last thoughts, Chance?
Said I think that's about it. With that being said, everyone, enjoy the game. Starts at 8 p.m. Eastern time. I believe this one will be a good one to watch. It'll be on ESPN. And said I hope y'all enjoy it. I know we will. And after the game, we're going to do a recap sometime after the game. So everybody look forward to that. And also, we will be doing a preview for the national championship when hopefully Michigan and Washington are playing. So, with that being said, though, this is it for Locked In. We'll catch you next time.